Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. This is a really exciting webinar. We have people from all over North Dakota who are going to be talking about their experience today with farmers markets. So my name is Felicity Merritt. I'm the program manager for the Farmers Market Internship Program. And then Stephanie, who just stepped away as our executive director. And FARRMS is a nonprofit that supports sustainable agriculture and local food systems throughout North Dakota. And today's webinar, we are focusing specifically on the upcoming farmers market season, and we'll be hearing from farmers market managers as well as vendors. The FARRMS is hosting this webinar through a grant that we got in partnership with the Dakota College of Botano under a USDA Agricultural Marketing Service Farmers Market Promotion Grant. So our goal for this grant overall was to increase customer sales at North Dakota farmers markets. So we've done a few different activities, including a survey of farmers markets throughout North Dakota in 2019, as well as the farmers market internship program, which is what I manage this year, and other educational opportunities such as this one. So today we're going to be kind of delving into the insights in what customers want, what we learned from our survey in 2019, and you'll get both the perspective of the farmers market. We have the largest urban farmers market in North Dakota represented here. We have Annie from Red River Market, as well as a rural market, which is the Lemmon area farmers market. So we also have vendors from markets throughout the state who can be talking about produce, meats, vegetables, growing, and everything that you need to get your farmers market booth started. We'll be monitoring the chat box for questions. So if you're registered as an attendee, you won't have the opportunity to turn on your mic. This is just to cut down on background noise, but feel free to put your questions in the chat and we will try to answer those as we go. We have some question and answer time worked in throughout the webinar, as well as the last 15 minutes are open for attendees' questions specifically. Is there anything, Stephanie, that you wanted to say before I move into the survey results?
You covered the introduction wonderfully. We are going to start today with Felicity sharing some insights that we gleaned from that 2019 customer satisfaction survey. And I'm going to stop my screen so that Felicity can share. So the floor is yours, Felicity.
Okay. Thanks, Stephanie. So like I said, this is the survey we did in 2019. This was at the beginning of the grant when we were just trying to figure out what customers are looking for and what we can do to meet those needs. So this is just going to be an overview. I'm not going to be going super in depth, but we do have the full report that we will give you a link to a document with that at the end of the meeting. So the first question I had is, who did we survey? So there were 781 respondents from 44 different farmers markets throughout the state of North Dakota who responded. And then most of those were in our more urban areas. So we had our most responses from the Bismarck, Fargo, and Grand Forks area markets. The first question that we asked people in this survey is, how did they hear about the farmers market? And our largest group responded with word of mouth. So that is the best way to spread the word about farmers markets. But also up there at 27% was social media. So that's how most people are hearing about farmers markets. The next two categories are signage and flyers and posters. So these are also good methods for advertising your farmers markets. And after those, it really drops off. We have newsletters at 4%. And then this last 9%, which is other, that includes all traditional advertisements such as TV, radio ads, newspapers, as well as websites or like an email blast. So that kind of covers all of those other advertising methods. One of the more important things we also covered was, what does a customer at the farmers market look like? So this is an overview of all customers, again, in North Dakota markets. So it might skew a little bit differently depending on where you're located. But overall, 64% of customers at farmers markets were over 40, and then 32% of those were over 60. 36% of customers at farmers markets have one or more children in their household. So we see a lot of families there. And then 71% of them have traveled 5 miles or less to get to the market. So these really are the local people who are living in your town who are coming to your farmers market. And 34% of people spent between $11 and $20 per trip at the market. And then 76, so the vast majority of people were spending between $6 and $30. And 68% of people shop at the market either weekly or twice a month. So we do have a lot of repeat customers. These are loyal customers who are coming back again and again. And when we asked customers what the most important things were to them, the top 3 responses were supporting local farmers, quality products, and buying locally. So most of our customers were not as concerned about the price or other things like that. They're really concerned with getting quality products from someone that they know. And so this question is really kind of part of the reason that we're doing this webinar today, because when we ask customers the best way to improve farmers markets, over 50% of them said that they want more growers, more fresh fruits and vegetables at the market. But we also had a lot of people saying they would like more meat and cheese options, more prepared food. So that could be bakery items or food trucks. A smaller amount said more organic options. And then just around 10% of people said they'd like to see more artists and crafters. So that covers, we have a lot of these represented today, but they really want to see more options and more vendors at farmers markets. So I quickly want to talk about what this means for you, whether you are managing a market or vending at a market. We've really learned that our customers are loyal, and so they'll be coming back, and it's important to try and build a relationship with your customers and get to know them. They want to know your family and your story, and don't be afraid to use social media to be posting those behind the scenes, maybe not perfectly polished things, but really letting your customers know your story. And then also your customers are local. So a good marketing strategy would be talking about the benefits of your product to the local economy. Talk about where your farm or your business is located, and highlight the quality of your products, because that's really important to these customers. So that's everything I have about this survey. Like I said, we have a more in-depth report on this, but this is kind of just the highlights and some things to keep in mind as we move forward. Is there any questions? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Felicity. Next, we have 2 farmers market managers sharing their perspective. Behind every farmers market, there is a market manager who spends countless hours organizing and promoting the market, and we're so grateful for the work they do. So we have Annie and Katelin here to provide the market manager's perspective. Please introduce yourself and your farmers market, starting with Annie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Huffman. I am the market manager at the Red River Market in downtown Fargo. I'm going into my fourth season being the manager. I'm really excited. Just a lot of fun things planned this year. But yeah, that's about everything.
And Katelin.
Hey, happy to be here today. So my name is Katelin Ginther. I am the manager of the Lemmon area farmers market. I live 5 miles north of Lemmon, South Dakota, on a ranch where we raise grass-fed cattle. We have a couple greenhouses. I run a catering and bakery business, and all of that kind of just spills over into being a vendor at the farmers market.
Could you talk about your role as market manager, starting with Annie? What are the things that market managers do?
Currently, we're a couple weeks out from starting our season, so I've been spending a lot of my time working on the application process. So this would be working with all of the vendors, making sure their application is complete, getting payments and insurance, and having orientation meetings with everyone, knowing, so they know what to expect. Once the season starts, my role kind of shifts more into communications with the vendors. And so I normally email them every week before market, make sure they know what time they can show up to start setting things up, where they'll be located, any special events happening that weekend, as well as working on the layout for that particular market. And then on Saturdays, when our market is held, I normally get there about 2.5 hours before the market starts to help all the vendors start loading in. So we load everyone in shifts so they can start coming at different times, and I tell them where they can set up. And then after setup is complete and the market starts, I will normally be walking around the market, making sure everyone has everything they need, answer any questions. Sometimes I will go back to the office and work on some stuff, any paperwork that needs to be processed. And then I come back and help with teardown. And then we start it all over again the next week.
My role as manager includes setting up the yearly schedule for market, taking care of social media and advertising, lining up extra activities like musicians, games, food for our larger events, a lot of other smaller details that go into a successful market too, and basically everything that Annie mentioned as well.
Different markets have different rules and expectations of their vendors. I was hoping you'd each talk about those and what a vendor should expect.
Of course, I think some of the main things that we would require, of course, would be sending in an application. And then from there, we do require insurance. Our market itself is insured, but the vendor's personal items are not. So we do require insurance for all of that. And then there is a vendor payment that is processed at the beginning of the year. You can get daily passes or season passes for that. And those we collect kind of just to keep the market running. So some of it goes to paying me, and some of it will go towards the programming, as well as any permits or fees, paying for the porta potties, the hand sanitizer, just all the extra, I guess, payments that need to be made throughout the market just to keep it running.
So I recently started a vendor checklist just so that my vendors could go through that and come to market prepared each week, because there's just a lot of little things that it's really easy to forget, because I have forgotten a lot. And we're a smaller market, so we don't have a lot of strict rules. We all kind of know each other, but we do expect our vendors to know what the rules and regulations are and follow those that are set forth by the state. And Annie touched upon the insurance, vendor fees, and what all of that goes towards. And for us, it's social media, advertising, paying for our musicians and entertainment for our kickoff and our harvest festival and all that.
In our orientation, we talked a little bit about some things vendors should not expect from market managers. Sometimes people misunderstand what your role is. Annie, can you talk about your experience with that?
I think a lot of what I've run into is people expecting an instant response from you, and you should definitely expect a timely response from your market manager. But a lot of managers work other jobs, or Katelin, you know, she has her farm and everything else that's going on. And so sometimes I'd get back from work and I'd have 3 emails from someone, you know, asking me things, and I would, you know, be trying to come replying to those. So I think just giving them a little bit of grace when it comes to replying back to things in an instant manner would be kind of one of the biggest things that I guess I have learned from this.
And Katelin, what have you learned?
I try to create a market environment that will be easy for our vendors to be successful, but especially with our area being so sparsely populated, it's really hard to guarantee success for our vendors each market. So just kind of equipping them with the knowledge of what to expect and having realistic expectations of sales, you know, not being disappointed with the market manager if things don't turn out great every single market.
Well, what questions does the audience have for our market managers? I saw a hand up earlier.
I do. Can I just talk, Stephanie?
Yeah, Peggy.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm wondering, we run into this, and I know so many other markets do. What is your response to customers that want early sales?
That is a great question. I'll just go ahead and jump into that. It's actually, you just kind of have to prepare for telling people that we will start selling as soon as market begins, because people who show up for early sales, you know, some people might just, for our market, we're in the middle of the week on a Wednesday from 5 to 7. That just works best for our community. And some people are just getting off of work. And in the past, we made the mistake of giving into those early sales and then not having a lot of product a half hour into market when some people are just showing up. So just be very firm on, hey, I'm so glad you're here, but you know, we'll start selling when market begins.
We have 2 questions about insurance. Elizabeth Ledoux asks what the insurance is for, and Miranda asked where vendors can get information about insurance. We will be sharing a resource document that has a link to Campbell Risk Management, but I'd like to hear what Katelin and Annie have to say about insurance.
Yeah, of course. So the insurance we require would be general liability insurance for your booth itself. So that would be just insuring your items. The market itself, as I mentioned earlier, is insured as an event. We have liability insurance for all of that, but it does not cover your personal items. So if something were to happen to your tent and wipe out, you know, everything in it, our insurance would not cover that for you. So that's why we require the insurance for that. And then, as Stephanie mentioned, a good resource for that is Campbell Risk Management. They offer vendor insurance specifically. So it's really easy to fill out and insure just your booth. So if you have a business that typically isn't insured, that would be a good resource to go to, because you can insure it by the day you're at the market.
We had one question for Annie specifically about the scheduling of Red River Market and why you guys choose to start in July instead of earlier in the summer.
This is most likely our most asked question. The customer demand is definitely there for having markets earlier. Unfortunately, the produce is not. So the reason we hold off a little later is to get more produce to the market, because that's our main reason for being there. We could have earlier markets, but then the produce wouldn't get there until usually that second week in July is when we're seeing most of that start getting there. So that would be usually why we start later than most markets do.
We're going to move on to our vendor panel, and we have time at the end if there's questions that come up in the meantime for our market managers. We've invited 5 farmers market vendors from all parts of the state. They are vendors of produce, baked goods, and meat. I'm going to start by having them introduce themselves. And we have one of our panelists who is still trying to get in. So Felicity, I'm going to have you facilitate for a few minutes while I support this person getting on.
Yes, absolutely. So our first question we have is just for all of our vendors to introduce themselves, talk about what you sell at farmers market, your name, and which market you vend at. So we'll go ahead and start with Adam.
Hi, Adam Mobby, run Garden Dwellers Farm and Ranch in Bisbee, North Dakota, and we travel. Garden Dwellers Farm, the herbs have been from Grand Forks to Minot, and with the meat sales, I don't normally stick to just one every week or every month. We travel around to a lot of different ones.
Okay, and then I will have Lori answer.
Hi, I'm Lori Martin. I own Roving Donkey Farm just outside of Bismarck, North Dakota. We are primarily in vegetable production. We do some value add with canned goods and a little bit of baking, but I've moved away from that in recent years. We only currently actively vend at a winter farmers market here in Bismarck, and in the past have vended at Bismarcket.
Okay, thank you. Peggy.
I'm Peggy Walter. My husband Ron and I run Cutbank Creek Produce, and we've been vending at North Prairie Farmers Market in Minot for 12 years, I believe. This will be our 12th season. We grow produce of all sorts, seasonal, of course. Try a little bit of everything. Not everything is successful, but we go throughout the year and we sell as much as we can.
Okay, and we heard from Katelin briefly, but would you quickly want to just talk about your role as a vendor as well?
Sure. Yeah, so we sell produce and vegetables, and I also do some baking. I've kind of moved into just filling in the need for bakery products if we're short on vendors, things like that. That basically sums it up.
And Felicity, we do have Christy with us, but she is on the phone. And so Christy, if you can hear me.
I can hear you. A little bit of technical difficulties this morning, apparently. So I'm Christy. I'm with Due North GF Bakery and Goods. And we started Farmers Market last year. We started with our gluten-free products, really not knowing if there was a market, and quickly learned that there was a market. And so from there, we have done the Grand Forks Farmers Market in Town Square. This year, we have added Larimore, Mayville, and then the Home of Economy one in Grand Forks has also opened up this year. So we kind of are traveling a little bit everywhere. So yeah.
Wonderful. So we're going to start our vendor panel discussion talking about market prep. Lori, I'd like you to start out by talking about what does preparation look like in the months and weeks leading up to season opening, those supply gathering and signage and things like that.
Sure. So one of the first things one needs to do is decide what market they're going to vend at and find out what the process is for applying to that market and fees and things like that. Booth design, taking into account what your booth is going to look like and gathering or purchasing any of those supplies, canopies, tables, tablecloths, cash box. If you are a returning vendor, checking the status of all of those things. I know that I would come in and we have a trailer that we keep all of our market supplies in that sometimes critters would find a home in the wintertime, so things would need to be cleaned, dusted off. Often at the end of the season, you're very tired, so going and doing any repairs that are necessary don't happen in October and November timeframe. So not waiting until the weekend before the first farmers market to make sure your table legs are all attached and things like that. I as I mentioned, we have a trailer, so it's really nice to be able to have everything in one location, not have to look for things spread out around your shed or barn or garage in the days leading up to.
And Adam, I was hoping you would speak a bit on the same topic since you are a meat vendor and might have some slightly different requirements.
Yeah, so we raise pastured lamb and pastured chickens, and those have different requirements and licensings. The chickens are able to just be filed some paperwork with the North Dakota Meat and Poultry Inspection Program, notifying them that I'm raising them and selling them at farmers markets. Whereas the lamb, I have to have freezers inspected by the local health inspector and obtain a retail food license through the Secretary of State in order to bring those to the farmers market and sell them or at any event. And then as well, booth prep, making sure you've got everything ahead of time. Coolers are a big thing. How far is the market going away? Lori mentioned picking which market you're going to and knowing what that entails, as well as the distance away. So the right cooler, thermometers, having product frozen solid, and being able to travel as well.
So now I'd like to hear from everyone about those busy days and busy days in the week before the actual farmers market day, leading up and market morning, including when do you start harvesting? Lori, we'll start with you.
Okay, so we try to harvest as close to market as possible because one of our marketing points is that our stuff is very fresh. So as the season progresses and we have a higher volume of things to harvest, things that are less fragile, we will harvest a little bit earlier, but I don't tend to harvest any earlier than Thursday for a Saturday market. Very sensitive items such as greens and herbs, I won't harvest until the day before. And we grow a lot of greens, so it's really important to get them out of the field before it gets hot and to hydro cool them to pull any field heat off of them. So for example, when I harvest lettuce on Friday morning for Saturday market, I'm out very early in the morning, sometimes before 6 o'clock if the sun is up enough, and I harvest into totes that get filled with water right in the field to cool them out in the field, and then I get them up to my wash and pack station and hydro cool them again with another batch of cold water to make sure that they are nice and cold. Then keeping them cold, we have a chest freezer that we have turned into a refrigerator, which is really, really handy. And the lettuce comes out of the water, gets dried a little bit, goes into a plastic bag, and then right into that chest freezer or chest cooler as quickly as possible so that the lettuce stays nice and crisp. The big concern with greens at farmers market is the heat because they will wilt very quickly, kale, chard, and lettuce. So we have coolers that we have some bags that are filled with water and then frozen. So they're like a flat, giant ice cube, basically. We put in the bottom of our cooler, cover it with a towel. You don't want your greens to come into direct contact with any ice as they will turn black. And the lettuce comes right out of the cooler into our out of our chest cooler into these, just a standard cooler with the ice pack so they stay cool at market. And they are under our table, which is under a canopy, so they're shaded. And if for some reason we don't sell out very quickly, we will rotate what's on the table with fresh stuff from the cooler so that things don't get warm and start to wilt.
Peggy, what's your day before, morning of look like?
Getting ready for market will start on Thursday afternoon and whatnot. I want to start by saying getting ready for market begins by cleaning up after the last market and making sure you have all of your stuff, your bags and everything organized so that when you're ready to load up, you can just throw it into the truck. It's an easy thing to do at the beginning of the week. if you're prepared there, then we start to harvest on Thursday, those things that aren't quite as perishable and whatnot, get them all cleaned up. We package, cool it down if necessary, and get it ready so that when we are ready to go to the market, we get up on Saturday morning, we'll load in all of our produce in crates ready to go and drive to the market. We have our price list ready, we have our tablecloths ready, we have all of that. And to be prepared and ready to go on Saturday morning is probably the best advice I can give. It helps you get set up easier also when you get to the market.
Absolutely. Katelin, you had some tips about supplies in your vendor list. Would you talk about cash for startup and items you want to bring with you?
Yeah. So this is definitely something that you could get ready in advance. I've made the mistake of saving it for last minute, and it just adds extra stress on the day of market, and then you're not showing up as calm and relaxed as you could be. So getting your cash for startup, bags for customers, pens, supplies, and any other items that you would need to be comfortable for the day, coffee, things like that. I often will have vendors come to me and say, oh, I ran out of bags, or oh no, I'm running low on startup. So always just having enough of that with you is a good idea.
You had a tip about how much cash to bring. I think you said 1s and 5s if your products are priced lower.
Yes. And for some of our like crafting vendors who have higher priced items, you're not going to need as much startup. But I always say you cannot have enough startup. So, you know, that's going to depend on how much product you're moving and what your product is. But I always have excess startup because somebody always runs out, and sometimes it's me.
Adam, you've got your day, your morning of looks a little different as a meat vendor. Would you talk about your packing up and morning of process?
Yeah, it really depends on which market I'm going to go to, especially with the meat, because I need to maintain the frozen solid and under or around 0 degrees temperature. So picking the right cooler, getting those washed up actually the night before, and either I leave them right in front of the freezer or get them loaded in a vehicle if I can keep the vehicle clean and protected. That way they're loaded into the cooler, fresh out of the freezer. They try and maintain all the products, maintain that nice coldness. And then I get to the market as fast as possible to get set up and hopefully start selling.
Thank you. And Christy, we'd like to hear your perspective on morning of as a baker.
So ours really starts about, we do an inventory kind of to see where we're at. What did we do at the last farmers market, whichever one we were at. So we kind of have an idea going into the next one. How many did we sell? How many didn't we sell? And kind of get a good average as to what we're doing. So we do a lot of like caramel rolls, cinnamon rolls, cookies, muffins, a lot of different types of things that need to be made prior to the day. So we'll freeze all of those, but have a good idea about the number that need to be made. So they have to be done in advance. We get those frozen and put them into the cooler that morning of. So the day before is really about making sure we have everything baked, everything that we're going to have for the farmers market to be able to have that ready to go. So it's a lot like Adam, where you're getting it prepared several days in advance and making sure that you have everything that you want to have with that. So that's kind of as far as baking. It's a little bit different than going and cutting everything. We have to have days before we get started.
Definitely. Jill Patterson, I see your questions in the Q&A. I'm going to save those for the Q&A toward the end. And unless there are any questions in the Facebook comments, I'm going to move on to booth setup. and design. What does your booth look like and what goes into setup and design? And Katelin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so we have a large canopy and we kind of make it look like a storefront, try to make it look as appealing as possible, everything at eye level. And I would try to encourage people to have a setup that flows really well, which allows your customers to enter and exit without that getting congested. But just being really clean and organized, and pile it high and watch it fly.
Adam, you have some great information, and I have made you a presenter so that you can share your screen.
So with the meat products, you don't want them sitting out on top of the table. So in order to attract people in, I use a lot of informational recipe books, nutritional value, pictures describing the story behind the products and the farm and the ranch. There's t-shirts and any type of swag. I've got a spinning wheel for trivia game, little critters to attract in kids, because in the survey it said 36% of the people have at least one or more kids with them, and they'll follow around the kids. So try and use the kids to sucker and mom and dad to get some sales. Anything like that to fill that table to still have, like, I've got product in that pile it high and let it fly mentality, but really my product is hiding behind the table, keeping cool. So
great. You've both mentioned pile it high and let it fly, and that refers to just something that we teach farmers market vendors to create a sense of abundance by, keeping your product piled high. If a tub starts to get empty, consolidating things so that things don't look empty. I think it's based on a psychological idea that people are attracted to the idea that you have a lot of great stuff. Christy, you had some comments about your booth design that were really great.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is like all the other panelists have said, is really getting something that attracts people there. So you want to have your signage, either whether it's a vertical sign or a horizontal sign, really having a big sign that says, "Here I am, this is who I am." We have our tagline that kind of brings a little bit of fun nature to it, is nobody noticed it was gluten-free. And so people have a comment on that, and it kind of really starts a conversation. So you bring people in that way. The other thing is, like, I remember last year when we first started doing our jellies, we had a lot of jellies. And one of the things is not putting too much on there, because we had a lot of jellies at first. They were all horizontal and vertical across, and there was just so much. Making it kind of fun. Like, we had one of the things that worked really well with our jellies is putting it into like almost a horseshoe or a rainbow type arc, and doing it that way. We found that people were attracted to that versus linear, and not really having too much, like having a few of everything, because we had lots of different variety. So really kind of playing with that to make it attractive and not being just so linear and kind of boring or too much. The other thing is, so we have to, we've tried a lot of different things. At first we didn't know much about the farmers market. We have 3 deep, and we had ours all, in a row, and people came to us. But as we started to get a little bit more creative, we got more people. And then word of mouth is a big thing too. Now people just seek us out. But as far as like having it look good, really kind of what everyone else, pile it high, let it fly. I think that's a great, I hadn't heard that one yet, and I love it. But making it look creative so that people can see it. The other thing is having table signs and pricing. So if they don't see a price, they're looking past it. Like, they want to know how much it is, what it is on the table. So not only do you have your sign, your business sign, but you also have table sign with the pricing. And then business cards, I think, too, is a really big thing because people are constantly asking for a business sign. Last year, we did buy so many, get one free. And so they would constantly be coming back to our booth week after week after week. And then, oh, I got my card. Can you sign that? And so that really brought people back. And that was kind of something that we found that worked early on.
That's a great tip. Lori, you had some great things to say about your evolution from coolers to some handmade stackable crates.
Sure. So when we first started out, we didn't have a lot of financial resources, so we kept it very simple in the beginning and just used our coolers that we use to keep our veggies cool in and turned them upside down and displayed our produce out onto the table our first couple of years as we started to generate some income and had the time to think about booth display. My husband designed some wood crates that they stack on each other. So we were able to create a taller display, and we painted the fronts of the boxes with chalkboard paint. So we are able to, as we sell out and have to kind of consolidate our display, we can erase what's in each individual section along with the prices, but the price and the items are right there in front of whatever product we're selling, which seemed to work really well for our customers. And we also had a sign custom made on vinyl with our logo and our farm name that's 1 foot tall and 10 feet wide, which is exactly the width of our canopy. And it hangs up at, I want to say, 6 foot height. And it's very visible from a distance, so people can really see that, oh, that's Roving Donkey Farms booth. Once we had our crates, we had a lot of recognition. People knew that that was our booth with the chalkboard paint and all that stuff. But having that big sign like above eye level kind of draws people's eyes to it so that they can see where we were.
Great. I'm going to move on so that we have plenty of time for Q&A. There's a few more points I was hoping you'd all make. I'll make sure we cover those in Q&A. But I really want to talk about customer interaction because that's such an important part of the market. And we're going to stick with you, Lori. How do you interact with customers? How do you provide good customer service?
Sure. So I learned very early when I was taking classes and reading about how to be a farmer's market vendor that you want to appear engaged. So I am constantly standing, especially when the market is busy, just to let people know that I am there. And I will say hello to everyone that walks by, whether they stop or not. And I make a point to not be on my phone or tablet if I can avoid it, if I'm not doing farm business, because I don't want people to think that my phone is more important than them. So the other thing that I found important was scoping out the markets that I wanted to sell at in advance. Just go and shop and see what the flow is like. Maybe go a couple of different times, go at the beginning of market and then again towards the end of market if it has a set end time. So you get an idea of what that looks like and kind of what to expect in terms of customers being there.
Thanks. Adam, would you talk about telling a story about your product?
Yeah, so I originally started with sheep. Chicken is a little bit more known, but when I was trying to get the lamb meat out, I kind of became a little bit of a carnival barker to get people in. And once they were in and you start telling them a story about what you're doing and why you're doing it and where you're doing it, they're keeping it local, hitting good quality, and supporting community. Then it really brought the customers in and they got curious, and you had all sorts of, like I was showing information to hand them, to give them, to reinforce all of that. Was always really good.
Peggy, would you talk a bit about creating that community feeling
Sure. We grew up in the town where we sell our produce at, and both my husband and we know many, many people. And whether they are purchasing from us or not, and we see them out there, we definitely give a shout out to them, say, hey, nice to see you. Thank you so much for coming out and supporting our market. They love it. They look forward to you recognizing them and saying hello. So anybody that walks by, a smile and a hello oftentimes just makes their day. So that's how we approach it.
Yeah. And, oh, Katelin, you had some good advice as well.
Yeah, just especially because we're a smaller market. I know pretty much everybody who comes to market, and we also serve a community meal, whether it's through the church or through the school. They have different fundraisers and we'll host a meal. So for us, it's a really great opportunity for our whole town, and a lot of people come to our market. So I'm so appreciative of every single person who shows up to market to support us, to support all the vendors. So just being genuinely friendly and lighthearted. A lot of people will try to negotiate prices, and just don't take it personal. Just remain firm on your prices, but it's like, no, cucumbers are not 2 for 1, but I'm glad that you want to buy them. But yeah, and just having a connection with people.
Definitely. So you all have such great experience and insight. We're going to go around and give all of you the opportunity to answer the question, what's your best advice for a first-time market vendor? Starting with Adam.
First-time market vendor, do some research, know which market you're going to go to, and be friendly even with the other vendors. You'll find that it is a community just between the vendors. They are there to help each other out as well as kind of compete a little bit, but they want everybody to have a good day. So sometimes you just got to walk away from the booth and say hi yourself to a vendor or something, spy on it a little bit from away, and people would come up and maybe grab some information and come back later and talk.
What about Christy? What's your advice?
I would say the biggest thing is to just have fun and just go with it. Whatever happened prior to, maybe your phone didn't work and you couldn't get in, or, but anyway, you come in, it's something happened. Just let go, just have fun. Whatever will be, just move forward and really just have fun with it. And then get to know the other vendors. We have people that we all become kind of a family, and I love that about farmers markets. Like we started up again this year, and you get to see all these faces you haven't seen since last year. And they're like, oh, I always refer people to you because they're always looking for gluten-free. And it's so awesome that if we wouldn't have created those relationships, I wouldn't be able to refer to other people, nor would they refer to me. And so it's really about letting go, having fun, and then just building that community.
Absolutely. Lori, what is your advice?
My advice is that it's okay to be patient and flexible. 2 things that I am not super strong at, but your first year isn't probably going to be your best year because you're still figuring out how to do things. Your booth may completely change, your booth layout and design, and people need to have some time to get to know who you are. Depending on which market you sell at, some people may be very particular about who they sell with, and they may not pay attention to you right away. I grow unique varieties of usual things. So my first couple of years, I gave away a whole lot of lemon cucumbers because I was a firm believer in the lemon cucumber. I had to convince my farmers market customers that they should be too. Now I sell out of them, but it took a couple of years to get there.
And Peggy, what is your advice?
I, of course, tell everybody to have fun and enjoy the day. Don't have too many expectations. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Great. And Katelin?
Yeah, definitely everything that everybody else already touched upon. But one thing that I personally learned as a vendor was maybe don't go overboard. Say with my bakery items, it's better to just focus on those few items that you notice sell really well and make those in bulk. Try to make it as stress-free as possible for yourself while also giving your customers what they want. If you have a new product that you're trying to move or sell, try to have samples of that. And Adam mentioned before, just kind of turning things into a story, especially with food, people love that. I've actually had a person come up and was like, what's an English cucumber? I'm like, do you want to try it? And it was sliced into it and they tried it and they're like, these are amazing. So yeah, just have fun, be relaxed as possible. And also keep track of your sales because you're going to be able to see what sells well and what doesn't and kind of go from there.
Annie, what advice do you have for new vendors?
Personally, don't be afraid to start out smaller than you originally hoped. I tend to see a lot of vendors get really excited, and I'm definitely this way too, and just have these big plans and then get stressed out trying to follow through with all of it. So your first year, I would say, you know, maybe cut back on your menu items or grow fewer varieties of things, just not stress yourself out and allow yourself to grow slowly with your booth.
Thank you. Now we have time for all the questions that I know you in the audience have for our vendors and our managers. And I'm going to start with Jill Patterson, who has 2 questions in the Q&A box. Jill is asking about berries, specifically strawberries.
Sure. Yeah, I see the question in the answered section here. So I grow a lot of berries, but the birds tend to get first dibs no matter how hard I try to exclude them. And because I do vegetables primarily, I just don't have the time to focus on the berries to the level that they need in order to be super successful. The other thing I find with berries is they are very similar to flowers in that they are expensive to produce and it's challenging to compete with the price of berries in the store, just like with flowers. And to be able to bring enough volume. We do have a producer here north of Bismarck that grows strawberries, and he's got them for about 3 weeks out of the season, and they fly off of his table, and there's never enough, and that's great. But I also know that he has a ton of labor helping him, and I'm a one-woman show for the most part, so I don't have the ability to manage berries, and pest pressure can be really, really high. So if that answers your question.
I basically just want to agree with Lori on this because we have so much going on out here at the ranch and also managing the market. Then as a vendor, I would love to have all sorts of different berries to provide to our customers. I would love to have cut flowers. I want to do all the things. But there's only so much time and energy that one person can put into something. We did bring on an employee, but you know, again, there's so much work that goes into planting and weeding and maintaining a garden, and harvesting and bringing it to market, and all that is so much work. So kind of like what Lori said, it's just kind of one more thing. We're a 1, 2, 3 person show. It just gets to be a little overwhelming, but there's definitely a market for it. So if somebody wants to become a berry grower, that would be great.
So Jill is also asking how many acres each of you farm for markets, and if any of you do CSAs. She's wondering about juggling between markets and CSAs and what you prefer. Lori, I'd like you to take this one. You know why.
Sure, absolutely. So as I mentioned in the beginning in the intro, we don't actively sell at a summer farmers market any longer. We primarily market to restaurants, our local food co-op, and via CSA. We have been doing so we started in 2012 and only sold at farmers market in 12 and started doing restaurants, CSA, and farmers market in 2013. The way we juggled farmers market, CSA, and restaurants, it actually worked out perfect because of the way that we structured it. We were able to have 3 harvest days. We had a restaurant harvest day, a CSA harvest day, and a farmers market harvest day, spaced far enough apart that the plants were able to continue to mature. We would harvest for restaurants Monday. We would harvest for CSA Wednesday, Thursday, and the farmers market on Friday. I prefer the path that we are currently on because there's no speculation in how much to pick and how much to plan for growing as we move everything that we grow. Farmers market was a really great intro for us to not have to worry if the lettuce failed. Because if we had it, we brought it to market, and if we didn't, we didn't, and the customers weren't any wiser. I have a 1/4 acre in total production, so I am able to serve 4 locally owned small restaurants here in Bismarck. Along with this season, we're feeding 16 families via CSA every week. We have gone up to 20. That's a little much on a 1/4 acre production for us. With the pest pressure we have, we unfortunately have more loss than I would like to see. But I do prefer CSA. I would not start with CSA if you're just getting into growing vegetables or marketing products. You want to get better. I don't want to say good because every year I get better. You want to get better at what you do before you commit to being like, I'm going to feed 10 families every week for 16 weeks. That's a lot of pressure. At least it was for me. I wanted to make sure that I would have that food for everyone.
I also want to add that what we teach in our Farm Beginnings course is that farmers markets are a great way to start out as a farmer, but farmers markets aren't for everyone. Maybe you want to spend your Saturdays with your family instead of at farmers market, or you just aren't comfortable. Maybe you're just kind of an introvert and not comfortable doing public vending. And we want everyone to know that's okay too. There's lots of other ways to succeed as a farmer: CSAs, wholesale, restaurant sales, on farm stands. So who else wants to touch on CSAs and specifically the question about how many acres you each are producing on?
I can help with that. We have about 1.25 acres that we put in. We do a lot of potatoes and a lot of dry land. It changes all the time. It generally gets filled up, and my husband and I run it ourselves. We do a Saturday market, and then we also sell wholesale. That's what we'll do with our crop at the beginning of the week. And we sell to local restaurants also. In Minot, we need to be inspected and licensed by First District, which we are. And then we also have on-farm sales. So by the end of the season, we're generally sold out.
I have a question for the managers from Amy Conklin. How do you prevent oversaturation in certain areas? For example, too many soap vendors, baked goods vendors, or arts and crafts. Do you limit the number of a particular type of vendor at your market?
Yeah, that really depends on the type of vendors. So for us, a lot of like bakery items, people tend to sell the same types of things. So you could have, 6 cookie vendors all in a row. And so we try to spread them out, around the market so people can find them at different times. And then being a farmer's market, we do tend to not allow as many craft vendors. So we do limit the amount of craft vendors that are let in, just to not oversaturate the market with craft items when people are there to get food items. So we are a food market, and so our main focus is the food vendors. And so that would be where we would limit some of that.
How do you address that in Lemmon, Katelin?
Yeah, so as a smaller market, I know pretty much all of my vendors, and it's only come up a few times where we'll have an overlap and maybe 3 of my vendors want to bring cupcakes or pies or things like that. And, I'll just have a one-on-one conversation and say, this week I know that so-and-so is bringing this, this, and this. Would you maybe want to try something else this week? Or when I have had new vendors get a hold of me and say, hey, I've got this item that I want to sell, and we've already maybe got 2 other vendors to do that, I'll inform them of the reality, like, you may not sell as much if we have an overlap and vendors selling the same thing. And I want them to be successful, so I kind of frame it in that way, that I want to see you succeed. I'm not trying to micromanage what you're doing. I myself will see what my different vendors are bringing, and if somebody else is doing chocolate chip cookies, I'll do donuts or something like that. So with our market being so small, I really don't want to discourage any vendors from coming, but yeah.
I want to hop in here really quickly and say, in general, customers want to see more vendors. So especially, like Annie said, food items, produce, that will always sell out. And I think that the only complaints I've had from working in farmers markets is usually about the ratio of vendors. So if you have 4 coffee vendors, but only 2 produce vendors, people will complain about that. Not because there's too many coffee options, it's because they came to a farmer's market to buy mostly produce, meats, cheeses, food. So if you have, for example, artists and crafters who want to apply, but you have more artists than food producers, that's where you're going to see the issue. So I think just think about the ratio. For every vendor you have selling arts and crafts or soaps or handmade items, make sure you have more who are selling food items, and to keep that balance.
I'm going to take a question from Robert Pearson.
Yeah, so just to quick introduce myself, since I snuck in a little bit late. I'm Robert Pearson. I'm the IT manager at Home of Economy. I've been for all Home of Economy stores, but I've been helping organize the market that we're trying to bring back at our Grand Forks store for the time being. And really right now, just because I'm actually packing the car now to go up to our second time with the market this year. I've not had to think about that problem so much. We've been starting off saying, our advertising is to the consumers. Our advertising is pushing this as a connection to regional food, connection to local food. So we've been asking the vendors to say, can please, we want food vendors right now. Some folks have had crafts and said, no, and that's fine too. Just, if your booth can be predominantly food, that would be very nice, because again, we want people to find what they think that they're coming to find. We tell them that there's food. They should, we want people to find food. As we get into it, I think these are, I was listening very hard to actually this section, because this is something that I'll have to deal with. And can only say that it sounds like the right approach, is to say, if the character of the market is still a food market, make sure we've got more food than crafts, make sure that we're keeping everybody up to speed with whatever kind of information, I feel that everyone should know. Say, hey, we've got 5 candle vendors. You want to be part of the market. We don't want to turn anyone away, but just heads up, we do have also 5 candle vendors or whatever it is, right? So beyond that, yeah, I don't know. I'm because we're just starting out. I'm afraid I'm going to have an awful lot of, well, this is what I'm going to try.
Thank you, Robert. Would you put your contact info in the chat? We have someone from Northwood who is interested in learning more about opportunities, and we'd love to grow this partnership with Home of Economy and maybe make Home of Economy farmers markets available in other parts of the state too.
No, that's the goal, is eventually every store that we can fit it in at. Some of our parking lots aren't only ours, you know, some of the like our Watford City location, for example, that's a strip mall, so we may not just get to put whatever we want out in that lot, right? But right. But yeah, no, I'll get that into chat presently.
Thank you, Robert. I wish we could go all day. We have so many great questions, but it is 1:15 and I want to share just a few slides with you so you can see where to find more information. I'm sure there are more great questions. I wish we had time to get to them all. So I want to be sure that you know how to contact our presenters today. And these slides will be made available to you after the webinar. We will upload them to our website. We will email them out to all attendees, and they will be on our Facebook page. So this is how you can reach everyone who presented today. We have more info available for you. If you have more questions, if you want to find more resources, we've put together a resource guide just for you. This is available at bit.ly vendor resources, and that will be made available. The replay of this webinar will be available on our Facebook page, and we are recording today, so the recording, the slides, that resource link will all be available on our website after June 18th. We need a few days to put everything together. I also want to let you know that this project was a partnership between Dakota College at Botano's Entrepreneurial Center for Horticulture and FARRMS, and it was funded by a USDA Farmers Market Promotion Program grant. I feel like I can't end this webinar without acknowledging our former Farmers Market and Growers Association Executive Director, Holly Mobby, who's no longer with us, but who did so much to promote farmers markets in North Dakota. And so we all need to acknowledge her, and we miss her greatly. So thank you all for a great webinar, and have a great afternoon.